I'm going to just take one moment to introduce Hortense Spillers, who has kindly agreed to make some closing remarks after sitting through these days. I'm going to tell you what you probably now already know, that Hortense Spillers is the Gertrude Conaway Vanderbilt Distinguished Professor Emerita at Vanderbilt. I was just myself recently almost shocked by the news that Hortense had retired. It, to me, is a kind of cataclysmic break in the academy, which has to do with the kind of oddly conjunctive way in which both of our careers started at the same moment and intersected early on. And Hortense has been a generous and wise and constant contributor to the momentums of Boundary 2. You know her work, of course. Conjuring Black Women, Fiction and Literary Tradition, Comparative American Identities, Race, Sex, Nationality, and in Modern Text, the great book, Black, White, in Color, and of course the constantly read and internationally famous essay, Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe, an American grammar book, which has been followed by dozens of other interludes and commentaries and interviews. I'm proud to say that we are in the journal about to close my period of editing the journal with a special collection of essays on the work of Hortense Spillers, which will also contain I'm sure, an important new interview with her. So to close our event today, please welcome Hortense.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. I really appreciate it. And thank all of you for staying, for being here, for coming to this event. My remarks are going to be really quite short. We've had a long day and fabulous papers at this conference. I've been marveling the last couple of days at how refined these papers are. And I've been sitting there thinking, what in the world are you going to say? I mean, what could you possibly say? I kind of think we've had closing remarks already from Don Pease. Yeah. I mean, I really think a lot of what Don had to say, I'm going to say a little bit of it, but not much. But in the context or in the spirit of what Don was saying, I want to offer these remarks, and also to thank him for his generous hospitality, for having us here. You know, I had a perfect plan, and the plan was not to give a paper at all. And, I thought that would be wonderful. But that particular idea got nixed by Paul. And it went something like this. Well, since you be there in the audience anyway, why don't you offer closing remarks? So, what could I say? This is my first trip out of Nashville, Tennessee since early 2020. I have not been on a plane in 2 years. So it's been a little difficult not going anywhere in 2 years, but I'm handling it pretty well, I guess. I also want to apologize to Lindsay and Jonathan for missing the morning. So these remarks that I'm going to make, I want to include in it, or to think about it as a tribute to Boundary 2 and the collective and its boards for a half-century of commitment to reading and humanistic practice. Listening for a through line to these talks, I didn't quite hear one except for the usual urgency with which B2 colleagues treat serious subjects. I do want to pick up on the problem of genre that Paul evoked in his presentation on Henry Adams's education, and it reminded me of the problem of genre and of style as I confronted in the history and practice of Black studies a little more than 50 years later. Of course, I've often taught at the grad level and called it the idea of Black culture has always opened with Du Bois's Souls of Black Folk, which powerfully revisits the problem of genre by writing across several genetic forms and configurations in this narrative of what Du Bois calls the drama of a tremendous striving. And this has led me to wonder what generic fusion or confusion, if we could say so, is being marked or concealed in this work. And it seems to me that the genre problematic habitually emerges in crisis, when the available epistemes are inadequate for explaining, analyzing, evaluating, and judging the world as one encounters it, as one embodies it. So it is not so much an iconoclastic dismantling action as it is acts of revision and correction, when one needs new styles and persuasions because what is available has become staid and cliched and no longer meet the urgencies of whatever now. For instance, I am digitally teaching this course at a small university in California, and we are examining a handful of contemporary Black thinkers, Saidiya Hardman, Fred Moten, Ronald Judy, Denise Da Silva, Nahum Chandler, Frank Wilderson, and Kevin Quashie. And what each of these authors have in common, it seems to me, is that in their respective way, each is responding to the hermeneutic demands engendered by Africanity and Blackness in the modern world. And this is a massive problematic not only across organized fields of knowledge and learning, but across the life worlds of the current planetary order. Therefore, these writers, in their stylistic, lexical, grammatical choices, do not present transparent articulations. Actually, if you spend several weeks on the first 50 pages of Ronald Judy's Sentient Flesh, for instance, and I'm writing a review of that book, and it's been a long time writing the review because the people that I'm writing the review for keep checking in by email. How's it going? I'm still reading the book. So I've already explained to Ronald that the first line of this review is the following, that this is not a book to read, it is a book to visit. Think the big novels, Moby Dick, Middlemarch, War and Peace, right? But anyway, if the first 50 pages of Judy's Sentient Flesh or Fred Moten's In the Break or Nahum Chandler's Figure of X, Denise Da Silva's Toward a Global Idea of Race, and I don't even want to get into Winter because her sentences are difficult for me to get to. It wouldn't be stunning because these works challenge the concept of quick reading, of instant recognition, and in a world of Twitter and Instagram, you might imagine how these texts might go over with the current generation of college readers. So I've been thinking, well, if that's the case, why do you assign these texts? Why are they assignable? Excuse me. If you already suspect well ahead of time that cultivating an audience for them is going to be difficult. And the quick answer there is that the impossibility of these texts is precisely what necessitates them. And if I were more akin to the age in which I find myself and have found myself as a university teacher, I'd simply cave in and adopt easier texts. There are ways to do that. But I refuse to do so and much prefer to put a question like that, which I posed to this small class that I'm digitally teaching last week. Well, why are we reading this? And so I would prefer to put questions like that, or that particular question, on a list of interrogation that troubles my sleep, so that instead of having closing remarks, I guess I'm going to have some closing questions, and I mean this quite sincerely. It's not simply a rhetorical gesture. But there are certain things that are on my mind that must be on yours, as Donald's talk and Stathis's talk today reminded all of us. So in addition to that question about these difficult and impossible texts, I have a question concerning ethical behavior. And I've been thinking about this the last couple of years and haven't done much about it because I've been doing some other things. But I've thought that if I ever got time, and believe me that being retired does not seem to give me any more time than I always had. I mean, I'm still looking for time. So one of my ideas is to sit down with the genealogy on ethics and just maybe read for a couple of years. But I don't know, maybe you can save me a couple of steps. So questions concerning ethical behavior and how do we decide what is ethical today in a world that appears bound and determined to blow itself up, to blow itself away. It appears to be apocalypse bound. I wish I had Don's words for describing what he talked to us about today, and I attempted to paraphrase it, but it's not going to come out very beautifully. It's going to come crudely, and it goes like this. How do we respond to the Trump phenomenon that Don so powerfully laid out this afternoon? As he talked about sovereign nativist control, structural but sequential movement. Every moment of structural transition, this settler colonialist configuration reappears. And what I hadn't given a name to, even though inchoately, it keeps playing back in my mind as the truth, the effective fact. Because I keep wondering, how in the hell can a tissue of lies become truth for close to 50% of this republic? How is that possible? And so the explanation that you offered today gives me a framework for thinking about that, an effective fact, because it really does seem to me that the lie is so big that it can't be false, or it has to be in some ways true. And then I think I want to end with this question: how do we watch day after day a nation be destroyed by another nation, pulverized more precisely, its civilian infrastructure turned to waste? And the answer that we are given is ridiculous. We do it because we would avoid World War III. And so I thought, it's not exactly fatalism. I don't think that's what I don't think I'm a fatalist. But I've been wondering, well, I don't know, should we avoid World War III? And perhaps it's time to know that if we haven't discovered by now a reason to stay alive and a way to think about staying alive. So I think I want to end there. Thank you very much. And I think probably some of those questions that might have been meant for Don or Stathis or Ronald or any other speaker it might be well to pose them now. If nobody wants to talk about my questions about this war, I think I want to hear people talk about the war.
You want to stay a while?
Hmm?
You want to stay a while?
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Questions, comments, statements for the negative?
I don't think I expect answers. I think I want responses. I think I want answers because everybody has glib responses, right? Which is, oh, well, we have to avoid World War III and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Ronald.
Yeah, the last question, really, thank you very much. My apologies for being at all cause for your torture. Although I like to think that those first 50 pages are somewhat lucid. But the last...
They are. Somewhat, right?
No, the last question I think is really, I want to expand on it a bit. Not give a glib answer, but expand on it.
Yeah.
How is it that we have been able to witness that annihilation over and over again?
Exactly right.
Exactly. Shock and awe.
Yeah.
We've forgotten about Raqqa, Mosul. We've forgotten about what's going on in Aden, in Yemen. We've forgotten about what's been going on in Eritrea and in the Tigray province, which are quite similar and not even very different in scale. So what has happened to us, going back to this issue of ethical behavior that you asked about, what has happened to us as a species that we are incapable of recognizing a pattern, and that we can go into this kind of differentiation. I mean, one of the disturbing things about the Ukrainian situation is the response has been wonderfully humane. That's good. Why can't it always be that way? And what's been underscored by that is when the Nigerian foreign minister had to write the Ukrainians to say, why are you keeping our children from leaving? Right? And then the Indians had to say, why are you keeping our children from leaving? Right? And there was that embarrassing moment where they were pulling, the non-whites off of the trains and not letting them go to the border.
Right.
So this goes to this question of ethical behavior and the patterns.
Yeah.
What's wrong with us, apropos Iraq? What's wrong with us, apropos war? Mm-hmm. And one can't escape. Bernard Hess has a wonderful phrase. We talk about white supremacy, and yes, we do, we should. It's endemic. But there's also this notion of white sovereignty, by which he means a particular kind of epistemic structure in which only one particular subject position can be the source of value, judgment, and care. Mm-hmm. And you can have that attitude regardless of your phenotypic appearance.
I've wondered about the ethical behavior piece, and if it's naive to still raise those questions even, because it seems that the society is so cooled out and so self-satisfied and so complacent. Sometimes I wonder, I can't be the only person who's concerned about this, because everybody's going about life so normally. Why am I so agitated about this? Such questions, right? But I wonder if something has happened in the last few years that it looks worse than ever, or is that the effect of aging? I don't know. Anybody? Everybody else?
Yeah.
A clarifying question.
Yeah.
When you say a lie is becoming so big that it's in a way truth, what do you mean?
Don, what was it? What did you say? It's a lie too big to be. How'd you put it? That's right. I misquoted what Don was saying. Yeah. Untrue in the sense that so many people believe it. It would seem that you start wondering, is that right? Is that wrong? That's, yeah. Untrue.
Are you asking me to, I've said a lot today, and I don't want to keep other people's voices silent, but I do believe that we are, and I think Stathis and Ronald framed it quite nicely. We are at a position in which what is otherwise simply a kind of poetic notion, where humankind is at a kind of crossroads, and how you engage that site and what's being asked of the human at that site is, I think, what everybody in this event has engaged in very wonderful and yet different ways. I think that the Bruce Robbins framed it from the beginning quite nicely, and I think that the event has had a wonderful resonance that has also, I think, in the dialogue between a poet and Paul, literalized its own crossroads. So I think that site and the question that you're asking at that site, it's not answerable, but it's the question, I think, that's calling all of us, and to make this event genuinely memorable. And you do make every site you come to deeply memorable. Hortense Fillers.